I'm here with the founder of Grief Yoga, Paul Denniston, and we're talking about his new book, Healing Through Yoga, Transform Loss into Empowerment. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Laura, for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you here. And I really enjoyed the book, and I feel like it's going to help a lot of people. Can you tell me what inspired you not only to write the book, but to create Grief Yoga?
Yeah, I think I was going to yoga classes several decades ago to help with my anxiety. And as I became present within a yoga class, it helped me to tap into a lot of suppressed emotions that were beneath the surface. Perhaps that was also causing anxiety too, whether that be unresolved sadness, whether that be anger, judgment towards myself, towards others. And I remember the kindness and compassion of the teacher that encouraged me to rest whenever I needed to, especially when feeling overwhelmed. I remember having a powerful release, an emotional release within the class that was really what I was needing. And so, as I moved further as a student within yoga, I became very curious about where you hold emotions or struggle or pain within the body and finding ways to move it through. And as I became a teacher of yoga, I started to really focus on the space of intentions for classes. And I really became curious about what if I created an entire practice with the intention of how to move through challenging emotions and how to allow the grief the space to breathe, but also open it up for love to move through too.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, it's interesting because I feel like the mind body connection is relatively new. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's relatively new in our culture to be thinking about it and talking about it. And yoga is right there, helping bridge that. And and just as you described it, it's giving space for us to find where these emotions and where they're stored and how they're stored. So we understand it on a cognitive level sometimes that we feel bad, but we aren't so aware of how we store things. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with that?
Yeah, well, I think that when we're struggling, it's very normal for us to be stuck in our mind. I think it's normal for us to maybe think about the past and have regrets that we might be focusing on from the past. We might have fear of the future. It could be a place of catastrophizing what's to come, and or even sometimes if we've had something traumatic that happens and it affects us physically, sometimes what can happen is then all of a sudden, we go, oh gosh, now what's wrong with me? But instead it's a reflection of perhaps of like, no, what happened to me? And to recognize, is there a way that I can get curious about what's going on within the body? Because, it shows up in different places. Perhaps when we've experienced a loss, it can impact us within the chest where love lives, but it can also be where unresolved grief lives. It can live up in the shoulders and the neck. Sometimes that anxiety and tension, it's like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Or maybe even in the throat space where it's hard for you to express what you want and need and feel like it's hard for you to talk about the pain or the jealousy or the rage. Sometimes when that happens too, it manifests even within the jaw, grinding the teeth at night. Um, Sometimes processing challenging emotions can live also within the stomach and the solar plexus as we try to process challenging emotions. It can lead to overeating or anorexia, disruptions within food digestion. We carry a lot of emotions even just within our pelvis, which our pelvis can be a place for pleasure and creativity, but sometimes uh, repressed sexual trauma can live there. So it's really an exploration about where is their struggle and their pain within the body, and finding that mind-body connection that can help to lift the spirit is really, I believe, part of what the practice of yoga is about.
Yeah, exactly. And that it's exciting on a lot of levels for me, to be able to talk to you about this. And just kind of starting at the human level of what you talked a little bit about repression, but also, it's human nature to avoid these difficult emotions.
Yeah, who wants to go to that? It's like I want to. But here's the thing: I spent decades running away from it because, of course, I'm like, I don't want to go into the sadness. I don't want to go, and especially I got to tell you, as a boy growing up in Texas, whose father was a Baptist minister, I was also taught, hey, boys aren't supposed to cry, just do something about it. So I think there's this place of trying to avoid and come into a place of action, but I do think I even reflect on that space of like when buffaloes see a storm is coming, they don't run away from the storm. They actually run through the storm to minimize their pain. And so for me, I recognized I was trying to run away from the storm. And what was happening for me is I was trying to numb myself out. Drugs, alcohol, sex, anything to try to numb the pain. But what would happen is that things would just get suppressed and go into deeper places of disconnection. And so a part of this work and the intention for creating this practice too was to say, hey, what if we channeled the struggle in empowering ways? What if we learn to be with what is, but also there's a space that we can do something with it? And so what this practice then includes is a place of using movement, breath, and sound. And when I say sound, I mean the vibration of your voice, to take what is suppressed and actually move it through.
Yeah. You bring up a lot of great points. And, just kind of sticking with that idea of suppressing and how our culture kind of addresses, and then I want to get into the cycle of compassionate transformation, but how our culture, what it kind of puts on us so that it reinforces our kind of natural human nature to like not want to feel something, or wanting to avoid, right? Like wanting to avoid something. And men especially are brought up to like not deal, not to reveal these sort of things because it's weak. And which is incorrect. And I guess something I just want to put forward is in what is part of yoga practice and part of what you're talking about, which is vulnerability is actually a strength.
Right.
And that's kind of what that changes things. And so I would love for you to comment on that and also talk about the cycle of compassionate transformation, because that's where we get into all of the movement here.
I think what happens is that we begin to judge specific emotions. I think as children, as kids, if we were sad, we cried. If we were angry, we got angry, and then we just moved on to the next emotion. And yet, as we became older, probably taught by our parents who were taught the same way, sadness is a form of weakness. Nobody wants to see you cry. For my sister, who I dedicate this work to, she passed away from cancer. She was always taught also how, hey, good girls aren't supposed to be angry.
That's right.
And yet, as I would see, as she passed away from cancer, there was so much anger that she was going through and experiencing. And so, I think that this is a practice that's really about taking whatever is suppressed and actually allowing yourself to move with it and to be with it. And what will actually then happen in the end is that it leads then to joy or to happiness and stuff like that. But when you sometimes suppress the challenging emotions, you sometimes then suppress maybe what the emotions you're wanting to achieve too.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you brought that up about women, as girls being taught that anger's not pretty, and
Right.
boys, sadness is weak,
Totally.
it's just so genderized things, but very reinforced in our culture.
Right.
Um, so sorry, I lost my
I
track.
know it's okay. I'm like, where were we? Well,
I
here's
know.
so no,
Yeah,
you had
yeah,
mentioned the cycle of
yeah.
compassionate
Yes, yes,
transformation.
yes, yes, yes.
So why don't we go there, huh?
All right.
So I guess when I was doing this work, as I blended and became a teacher of many forms of yoga, I started to create a practice that was called grief yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was doing and creating this practice, I knew that I was like, okay, well, if we're going to explore the pain, we're not going to get stuck there. Okay. And also another thing is that sometimes as we're experiencing loss or struggle, we can feel exhausted from it feel drained. And so part of the work was to empower the people too, and to provide a little bit of almost like a GPS
Mm-hmm.
and to ways that we can kind of like move through it. So the cycle of compassionate transformation within this work is the first step is about awareness of the breath, awareness of sensations within the body, awareness of where you might be feeling stuck in the body, and then finding safe ways to befriend the body and move the spine. You want to create a little bit of a safety and start to bring the attention from the mind into the body,
Mm-hmm.
bringing that mind-body connection. And then the second step is about expression. Expression is using movement, breath, and sound to take whatever the struggle is and the pain is and to channel it through like fuel in powerful ways. And when movement and breath, when I speak of the word sound, sound can be a sigh. Sound can be a powerful, like a warrior. Sound can be sometimes when we're experiencing and going through loss, it can be a primal sound of why. Even the space of like if there is frustration or anger at God, to reach and to say why in that way using movement and breath and sound. Sound can even just giving the pain the space to move it through. The reason why I'm
Mm-hmm.
using sound is that sometimes we might not be able to articulate what the struggle is about. And so sound just gives it the space to move it through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The third step is connection.
Mm-hmm.
Connection is a place where, we find connection through others, within ourself, within spirit. But connection happens in a place of where we witness what's the struggle, witness the pain in the body, but also using flowing meditations that allow us to connect to more love, more self-love, more gratitude, and more grace.
Mm.
The fourth step then is about surrender. And surrender is a place where we learn to soften the body, relax the mind, gently begin to stretch, and move towards a place of peace as we find a space of relaxation and as a place of winding down.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step is evolution. Evolution is a focus on after this loss, I am different. So these are using techniques of movement, breath, and sound that allow us to find more perseverance, more
Mm-hmm.
resilience, a place to find more play,
Mm-hmm.
and a place to find more purpose. And so that's a little bit of the cycle of compassionate transformation that happens within a class, but it also can meet within, like the book itself, meet the person where they're at and say, I need to spend a little more time, releasing the pain, or I need to spend a little bit more time on learning to soften my body and let go. So it really meets the person where they're at to say, what would best serve me today?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the book offers many poses that you can just pick up the book and begin to work with it. And I imagine you have DVDs as well. That would be really helpful for folks.
I do. Well, it's interesting. It's like, as I've been working on this book for so long, part of it is like, how do you make yoga into a book? And so part of it's an experiential thing.
Yes.
So part of the work then was say, anybody who purchases the book, there's a free online companion course that will go with the book
Mm.
that will offer classes and guidance. So that's at healingthroughyoga.com. For anybody who purchases the book, they get the free classes to support the book.
Oh, that's great. And we'll have a link to that on our website as well for folks. And you also include a lot of examples of, kind of students and some of their experiences,
Right.
which it really helps humanize it for folks. And one question I have is, what, in those five elements of the cycles of transformation, where do you find people have the most trouble?
Oh gosh. The most trouble. It really is, I think that grief is as unique as our fingerprint, and
Yeah.
sometimes wherever a person is at is unique. For some people, expression can be like a liberating experience, and expression can be frightening for some people because
Yeah.
it's just like they're afraid that sometimes keeping a hold of it is a way of controlling it, and yet it just is bubbling inside of them and stuff. So I find that it really is different for each person. For some
Yeah.
people who might be in a place of like trying to find connection, it's hard sometimes to do that when there's so much pain that they're holding on inside. And so for some, it's like, we need to move the pain through in order to find a space of gratitude or grace. But yet I also recognize that in this place of disconnection that we can be experiencing, especially within this pandemic, sometimes people are like, I'm craving that space of connection, whether it's through connection and love and compassion to myself, or finding a connection and with another person, or connection to spirit. So I think that it's really subjective. I think, what, for myself personally, I kind of need all of those things in some ways. And I think each day is different. So, I mean, on one day where I feel like, I need to just find a sense of awareness and gently move my body, might be one day. And then the next day I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just like, I don't have any energy and I just don't know how to move forward. Maybe some techniques with evolution to help find a space of invigoration to help you to move forward might be what you might need today.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that you talk about creating ritual to deal with grief, and that is really important, and something that I think gets lost in our culture too, where we don't talk a lot about, where death is a little bit taboo and grief is a little bit avoided. So having ritual seems really important. What's your experience of that?
Yeah, I think that the sense of creating a ritual is where we take maybe something that's ordinary or maybe a mundane experience in life, and we mark it as something sacred or special. And I know that, like, within this pandemic, there have been many people that I've known who lost a little bit of that. Maybe loved ones who had to watch, their funeral on FaceTime because they couldn't be there. There are many different types of rituals that we experience that can be a celebration of life. Maybe it's a graduation ceremony. Perhaps it is a wedding. Maybe you even think of the rituals of celebration of even just like going to a football game, or, ritual of just going to theater or a concert. And so the sense of a ritual, I think, when we're struggling, just gives space for the struggle and the pain to breathe and to be. I believe that let's say grief doesn't need a lot of time, but it needs dedicated time. And so if you really say, I'm going to spend a specific amount of time, and I'm going to like dedicate this practice to a loved one who has died, and
Mhm.
go through a movement practice that honors their life and honors my life, it gives the space for it to move through. Sometimes if you're going and you're experiencing betrayal, like your husband or your partner, your wife betrayed you, and you're holding on to a lot of anger, sometimes by creating a little bit of a ritual to move anger through
Mhm.
can be a powerful thing. And so rituals, it doesn't have to be a long period of time. I think of yoga as a ritual. It can be an hour, it can be 20 minutes, but it's really setting aside for a beginning, a middle, which is part of the ritual itself, and then an end for completion.
Oh, that's really helpful, I think, for people. And what are you experiencing? What are your students? How are they changing? Like, how are you seeing them working with this and taking this forward in their lives? And
Um, I see them saying to themselves, I'm struggling and I need to spend a little dedicated time to doing this. A lot of the comments that what I seem to get is there could be a little bit of a fear of like, oh, I don't want to go into the pain. But a lot of the times what happens is on the other side, there is a space of peace that
Mhm.
can come. And so what I'm literally seeing a bit is transformation.
Mhm.
And within this work specifically, because I'm dealing with people who have experienced so much different types of loss or
Mhm.
trauma, it's also work to empower them to say, because I we need to find our resilience and our strength to help us to move forward in life and to hold that vulnerability. You shared how that vulnerability is strength. So we need to tap into our core and our strength and our almost like our warrior power to
Mhm.
help us to support the heart. And what eventually then it leads to is there's a space of like peace
Mhm.
that that I see. And so that's the intention and the goal.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Um, you worked a lot in hospices
I
and
did.
doing heart touch massage. Can you talk a little about that and how
Ah,
it's informed
sure.
you?
Heart to touch massage is when you work with in hospice and you
Mhm.
sit with the those who are in the final stages of their life, and it is a gentle massage where perhaps you massage their hands and you
Mhm.
maybe reflect and think about, I wonder who how many people have these hands touched?
Mm,
Thank you, hands, for touching so many people. Or
mm,
maybe it's about massaging their feet and to just get curious and say, I wonder where all of these feet have walked.
mhm,
Or thank you, feet, for holding this person up. It's really an acknowledgement as the body is slowly beginning to enter its final stages to create a sacred ritual to just to thank the body. And yeah, it's a very and for those people who you know are in so much pain, it perhaps gives them a place of maybe a little bit of a relaxation and pleasure and appreciation that they're they're seeking. But it's also a place then for me to
mhm,
learn, being a bit of an empath, that it
mhm,
also helps me to remember to say, I can sit in someone's struggle and pain, but I don't have to take it on.
yeah,
I got enough pain in my body. I got enough
mhm,
pain. So
mhm,
it's a place where I can shift it and maybe cross the line to a place of like, I can be with this person in a compassionate space. And maybe I do connect to a place of empathy and I put on their shoes, uh,
mhm,
and figure out part of what their experience is, but I don't take their shoes with me. I take them off
mhm,
in a way. And
mhm,
so it's just an act of like grace in
mhm,
recognizing the body, and to for me personally to recognize about how to be with someone who might be struggling and in pain, but to not to take it on.
mhm. Mhm.
It was a big teacher for me as I deal with this within holding space for others within a movement process too. I was, it was debilitating for me at the beginning as an empath because it would be just too much, and
Mhm.
so it was a place for me to be able to say, what if I focused more on compassion, which I really believe is the heart of what yoga is about. It certainly is with grief yoga. And how
Mm.
can I be compassionate as I sit with and be with and move with my
Mm.
brothers and sisters who are struggling?
It was striking me when you were talking about the heart touch massage that it would be similar to holding a yoga class with people having things coming up.
Sure. And it's
Uh,
more of a place of being. Well,
yeah,
as maybe with a yoga class, you might be doing more, you know, you're
yeah,
doing stuff, but
yeah.
this was a really like a place of just being.
Hmm. And in yoga, you're doing and being, right? Like
That's right.
you're being asked to do both. Um, and holding, I really like the way you describe that holding and the importance of compassion in the process of both things. And so, and the importance of compassion in grief yoga, where you're holding, I imagine, this is me imagining that, part of what you're doing is holding a container of compassion so that what's coming up can be held.
Yeah, safe container.
Safe container. And it makes sense to me that, from that place of compassion, that there's a healthy distance, because compassion is a way of holding and not taking it on, as you're describing. It's really it's a masterful thing to be able
And it's a
to do.
lifelong process
It
too.
sure is.
Some days I'm good at it, some days meh.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Now, your partner is David Kessler,
Uh-huh.
and he's written a book or two books with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and specializes in grief as well. And so it's an interesting combination for the two of you. And I just wonder if you can talk a little bit about how maybe you work together or influence one another. But he writes a beautiful introduction
He
or forward
does.
to the book.
Yeah. You know, I mean, the amazing thing as at the beginning was that he made me see and recognize that what I was doing was I was personally uh, going to yoga classes to help me deal with my grief. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the grief expert who's worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and, you know, written books with Louise Hay. And so um, I guess it made me aware of like, oh, I am, you know, I'm going to, I'm moving with my grief or my loss or my struggle in a yoga class. I'm being with people in a compassionate heart touch space. So I think what happened for me then was it made me go more deeper into the work and say, let's go, you know, what I guess I had to also shift my thinking about how perhaps maybe I judged grief just because of the way that I was raised.
Mhm.
And one of the things that was a big identifying thing for me too in that space, and I think he was a teacher for me, and that is to just remember that grief is just a reflection of love, and that
Mm.
if I choose to love in this lifetime, that grief and sadness will be part of the process.
Mhm.
And so, but what would happen too is as I would go deeper and I would be learning different yoga teacher trainings and stuff like that, I got very fascinated. I had a choreography background, and
Mhm.
so I would look at moves, especially let's say from Kundalini yoga, as I
Yeah.
am a Kundalini teacher, and I would see how specific moves could be applied also to aspects of different places of loss. We would go together and travel and teach to therapists and counselors, and hearing where their clients were getting stuck and saying this move would be a great little kind of a little ritual to say this is going to be focusing on regrets, using a movement experience to move them through, or
Mm.
this movement little ritual is going to be a little bit of focus on how to move the rage through.
Mhm.
um, so that was kind of like part of the big influence within that. And just also as recognizing that as a partnership, if doing the deep work of grief and loss, you had to balance it out and also find moments of play, just for our own sense of like self-care.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, and you spoke a little about losing your sister and how that has informed you. And David, you lost David's son
Yeah.
and also your dog. And you talk about that in the book. And, it's a testament to your walking your talk. And that how you've brought this forward to help people, like you're helping people through your own understanding and your own experiences. And I don't know if you have anything you'd like to say about how that's informed you or how you navigated all of that.
I think for me, it's like you teach what you need to learn. And from a person who would run away from these types of scenarios, it was a great way for me to say, oh, actually, if I give the space to be with it, to move with it, to hold space with other people as they're doing it, there's something healing about it that I appreciate coming out the other end. So, I have held space for many parents who have lost a child, and I must say it's probably one of the most, brutal losses that someone can ever experience.
Yeah.
And there can be a rage that those parents can feel because they might feel like nobody will understand this. And so when experiencing and holding space with people, you can also say, I don't know how it is that you feel, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you, and if that means just being in a place of silence as I hold your hand, I just want you to know that I'm here for you if you need me. For me as a yoga teacher, I would be like, I get that you're holding the pain in your body, and I don't want you to hold on to that pain. We can create a little space to move it through, to help us to connect to more appreciation, more love. But sometimes that pain demands expression, and we need to let it out and move it through to get to that space of appreciation and love.
And you say in your book, and it's certainly a Buddhist principle as well, that suffering exists.
Yeah.
And so it's part of life. And so it's not something to be avoided. It's something to be held and appreciated for what it is, not run away from, but also to move through and learn what you're learning from it. Not to make it sound so pat, but it's bringing you deeper into the experience of being human. And
yeah. And we're all suffering. We're all struggling in different ways.
Yeah.
And is there a way that we can be kinder to ourselves when we're in a place of struggle? Is there a place where we can be with what is and accept it? And it doesn't mean that I have to like what it is, but just a sense of acceptance, which I do think is really then where we begin to start to move through it. And in that place of suffering, where can I find connection? And that connection I'm going to be a little bit more kinder to myself because I'm really struggling right now. Maybe that connection is, you know what, I need to reach out to someone and talk to them. Or maybe the connection can be, I need to go to a support group. Perhaps the connection can even be a spiritual connection, a place of prayer, of just saying, help me. Perhaps the connection is a little bit of a place of like, I'm going to take a walk and I'm going to send this person love. Perhaps within connection, there's a place that it's called the dance prayer that I do within my practice. And that is literally where a small little mini ritual of saying, I'm going to play this song and I'm going to take a moment and move in whatever organic way that I want to help me to connect to my beloved, my loved one. And at the end, it'll close it out. So in that place of suffering, what kind of connection would help me in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's remembering, and just talking to you, I feel like you're demonstrating this, is remembering we are not our suffering.
Right. Well, yeah, we're that quote from Wayne Dyer. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Right.
I
Yeah.
so yeah, we and sometimes it's hard to remember that because the
Yeah.
suffering just seems to be just like
All there is.
yeah. So that is correct. We are more than just this body, this struggle, this suffering. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And remembering that in the moment of that suffering, in that moment of surrender, or is that there's joy, and that there's still joy. And
which is why I include laughter.
Oh, I love that.
Yoga, laughter exercises in
Yeah.
a grief yoga class. I'm telling you, some people might think it's crazy, but here's the whole thing about it too, is that laughter is very important for us because laughter, first off, it allows the free flow of emotions to move through. Laughter allows the endorphins to be released. My sister, God bless her, she loved my laugh and she would want me to continue to laugh. And there's a way that sometimes laughter can lift our vibration to help us to connect in a more beautiful, meaningful way. And sometimes, here's the thing, the body can't tell if laughter's real or fake. Yet there's the benefits still happen. So what I'll encourage people to do is I'll invite them to even like connect to whatever it is they're feeling. If they're feeling irritable or angry, just a ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Or if they're feeling uncomfortable doing it, to just be like to like meet them where they are, but using laughter as a tool to move it through. You could be like an uncomfortable laugh. But the laughter can be contagious, right? So it can really start to it's moving the energy through in a way.
Yeah. No, yeah. And and I like what you see in the book. It's like it's releasing endorphins.
Yes.
And my partner and I was telling her about the book this morning over breakfast, and I said, we work in the fields that are, we deal with a lot of heavy stuff with people, but, we laugh a lot.
Good.
And it's like I said, so I think we're doing good, but it's true,
a fine line between laughter and tears too. Sometimes people who are doing laughter can all of a sudden break into tears. I'm a big believer that laughter and sadness or laughter and grief, they can coexist. They can sit with each other too, and they can be friends, that's my belief.
Yeah. Oh, necessarily. I think so too. And I think of, a great example is someone like the Dalai Lama, who, so boy, that guy's laughing all the time. He is having a good time. And then everyone thinks, he's such a realized being. He must not have hardship. Are you kidding? That guy is handling the grief of loss of a culture, a loss of a homeland for, hundreds of thousands of people. So we are more than our suffering, and we are brought more to ourselves because of having all the experiences of being human, and joy and laughter do rest.
Isn't that, that's right. I mean, that's all that, these are all human experiences, right? And if I'm going to be, we only have a select amount of time. So what if I just experience it all? I'm going to experience the laughter and the tears. I'm going to experience the anger and the peace. What if we, instead of judged them, what if we just kind of let them be like waves, let them move through it, and then moved on to the next thing?
Yeah, they actually have information. So your anger, it's telling you something. So sit with it, sit with it. Don't hide it, and then figure out what it's telling you so you can, move on. And it sounds like yoga poses and the grief yoga that you're talking about, that you've created, helps with that.
Yeah. It's about sitting with it and being with it, but moving with it too.
That's right.
A little bit of both. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I want to encourage everyone to, go and have a fun time at grief yoga with you.
Have a blast.
Go have some fun with Paul. Well, I want you to be my yoga teacher.
Sure.
On that. That's great. So, Paul, what is next for you?
Oh goodness, lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what's next for me?
Yeah.
I do trainings, and so I have
Mhm.
some trainings that are coming up that I teach and that I offer. What's next for me is I have a workshop that I'm going to be facilitating. It's called Moving with Laughter and Grief.
Mm.
Doing that.
Where are
I
you
have a
doing that? Where is that?
Where is it? It's online, and people can go to griefyoga.com for more information about
Okay.
that. Um, I have a membership that's going to be beginning in March, where
Mhm.
we're going to really go deeper into this work and stuff too. But yeah, just I would say for people who are curious about it, griefyoga.com is lots of free resources that people can check into to see what this feels like, and the book and the companion course are definitely places that people can
Mhm.
feel supported and kind of understand this work in a better way.
Oh, that's great. Well, I think you make it safe and positive, and really gives people, you know, an easeful way to work with some of the things that they're dealing with, especially grief. So I thank you for that and for the book. And thank you for being here today.
Ah, well, thank you, Laura.
Great to
I
meet you.
enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
You too.